Okay, so good morning, everybody. I'm Mayor Schulman with the Hartford Foundation's Nonprofit Support Program, and I want to welcome you all to the kickoff of the Fundraising Training Learning Series for staff and board members. So just a reminder that the remaining 2 sessions of the series will take place on November 14th and December 5th from 8:30 to 10:30, also via Zoom. So we want these sessions to be interactive. We encourage you to ask questions and also to keep your cameras on and engage during the sessions. We will also be doing a number of breakouts in which you'll be engaging with your team members. So we have a number of board members who are joining us today, and I want to extend a special thank you to all of you because we know that you are volunteers who are donating your time to nonprofits to make our community a better place, and we really applaud you for that. So thank you so much for being here. And of course, executive directors as well. We know you're very busy people, and we appreciate your taking the time out for this program. Very importantly, for those who haven't done so, please take a quick moment and rename yourself with your first name and your organization. Adding your organization to your Zoom square is very important because we will need to send you into the right breakout room with your organization's team at several points during today's session. And to get you to the right breakout room, we need to know which organization you're with. So if you don't know how to rename, hover with your cursor over your name in your Zoom square, right click and click rename. So in order to make these sessions as valuable for you as possible, we will be sending you a very short survey immediately following each session. Please take just a couple of minutes and fill out that survey so that we can use your feedback to make adjustments to the program as we go. I'd like to thank our fabulous support team of one, Monica Kelly, who has been doing double duty since our other person, Betsy Johnson, retired a few months ago. Monica has been instrumental in planning and helping manage logistics for all of our programs while we await the arrival of our new staff person. And many of you have known Betsy, and she sends regards to all of you. So Monica will be working her Zoom magic behind the scenes to get you to the right breakout room, which is no small feat. So just bear with us when those breakouts happen. So we have created a special web page with information related to this program for all of you. And the link to the web page was already sent to you in an email and will be sent to you in the email that you will receive following today's session. The web page includes the session PowerPoints and handouts, the recordings from the sessions, a list of participants, and any other materials related to the program. I also want to mention that if at some point your organization wishes to undertake a fund development assessment and planning process, our technical assistance grants may be used to hire a consultant to help facilitate your organization through such a planning process. And you can feel free to reach out to me at any time if you'd like to discuss this further. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our facilitator for these convenings, Shari Adams, who has over 25 years of experience as a consultant in the nonprofit sector. Shari consults with a wide variety of types and sizes of nonprofits in the areas of fund development, planning and coaching, governance, strategic planning, and organizational restructuring. Shari has also served as interim executive director and development director at a number of nonprofits. We at the Nonprofit Support Program have come to know and value Shari a great deal, as she has played a key role in leading several of our capacity building programs. Shari has also generously agreed to stick around after this session for what we call after class time. So if you have any lingering questions that you'd like to chat with Shari about in a smaller group format, you're welcome to stick around immediately following the session. So that's all I have, and I will turn it over to you, Shari.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to be here today. This is the first time we're offering this training, this learning series in this format. So I'm really interested in any feedback. So please make sure you include that on those evaluation forms that Mayor will be providing at the end of the session. I'm also really excited to see some familiar faces. I know some of you have participated in the fundraising training program, and other of you have attended the Hartford Public Library series on fundraising that I have facilitated. So welcome. There are 18 organizations joining us this morning, which is wonderful. We're really happy to have everybody here. I'd like to get started just with a couple of polls to learn a little bit about who is in the room. And if you'd like, feel free to take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat. Mayor is going to run the first poll, which is I'd like to get an idea of what your role is at your organizations. And if none of these categories fit your role, please use other and let us know what your role is in the chat. Okay. Just a few more are coming in. Okay, a couple more. This is great. We have a wide variety of roles and representations from each organization, which is great because your discussions and breakout sessions will be much richer with all the diverse perspectives that each of you can provide, whether you're a board member, an executive director, a development director, or staff. So thank you for sharing. Our second poll is, we're going to get to our second poll. Which is less about you and more about your organization. So I'd like to know how you describe your organization's individual giving program. Would you say it's not existent? You don't really have anything in place. It's just starting out. You've been working at it for a while. You're developing. You've been at it for a long time and you're happy with how things are going, or maybe another word. Okay. So this is great. We have a couple of organizations that are just getting started, a few who are a little further along, with the bulk of our organizations in the process of trying to develop their programs, and a few of you who are established. So what I'm hoping is that we can all learn from each other today, learn what's working from each other, and get ideas from some of the brainstorming that we're going to do. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. So today for our first session, again, this is the first session of 3 series over the next couple of months. We have 2 topics that we're going to talk about today. The first is concept of a culture of philanthropy, what it is, why you need it, and how to get it. I know some of you who have been with me before have heard me talk about it. I think it's really important, which is why I'm going to talk about it again today. We're also going to be talking about our fund development teams, about how we can strengthen them and how we can work together to improve our fundraising results. A couple of ground rules for the session. We do have, I think, almost 60 people, maybe 60 plus people here today. So I would ask that people feel free to ask any questions at any time, but to please raise your hand using the raise your hand icon or enter your question in chat. Mayor has graciously volunteered to monitor chat and the Zoom squares so that she'll let me know if anybody has a question. Also, I will be staying on at the end of the session to answer any additional questions that anyone might have. And I've also included my email at the end of the PowerPoint, so you can also feel free to contact me with questions offline. We do want this session to be interactive, so we ask that you please keep your camera on. Also, to please mute except when speaking. It cuts down on background noise. We will be doing 5 breakouts with your organizations today, and I'm asking that you select a note taker and a reporter for each breakout session. Note taker is really important job for our 3rd session together. We're going to be doing a little planning, some goal setting together, and you're going to want to use your notes from sessions 1 and 2 in that 3rd planning session. So please keep track of notes and take down things that you think might be helpful for setting some goals for your organization. In terms of the reporter, we're going to be asking people to either volunteer, 1 or 2 organizations to volunteer and share at the end of each breakout session, as well as other organizations to share their thoughts in chat. Also, I'd just like to make sure that everybody knows that anything shared in the session should be kept confidential, anything organizations choose to share. Also, I just want to take a moment to remind anybody who hasn't to please put your organization in your Zoom square so that Monica can get you into the right breakout rooms. Okay, so that's the housekeeping. So now we're going to start with our first topic of the morning, which is a culture of philanthropy. What I'd like to cover this morning is really talk about what a culture of philanthropy is, why it's so important, why I keep talking about it every time I do a training session, and then talk about how we can create or enhance our organization's culture of philanthropy. So what I'd like to do is begin and just talk about organizational culture in general and define it. So every organization has a culture, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit. And what it is, it's the way of thinking, behaving, or existing that works in an organization. It's those unwritten rules. If you've worked for different organizations or you've served on different boards, every organization you go to has its own unique personality. And when you get involved, it's learning what that unique personality is. It's about how things are done. So when one of the things that every organization has is subcultures, and our fundraising culture is a subculture of our overall organizational culture. And so that's our underlying assumptions about fundraising and the ways we do our fundraising work. So with that in mind, when we apply the concept of culture to fundraising, what I'd like you to do in our first breakout session, which is going to be about 5 minutes, is to share in your group what 3 words you would use to describe your organization's current fundraising culture. And after you've shared, I'd like you to think, is there consensus on what your current fundraising culture is, or were there varying perceptions? And then come back ready to share what you learned about your current fundraising culture. So 5 minutes in breakout, and we'll see you soon. I think everybody is back. I know that was quick. Do I have an organization that would like to volunteer to share their 3 words, what their group talked about? I think I see Melissa, you raised your hand from Shine Your Light.
Good
Thanks
morning,
for volunteering. Our first volunteer.
First and foremost, we thought we were extremely grateful. We are grateful when anyone or any organization donates $5, 500, 5,000. We're just grateful for everything big and small. We think that we have a growth mindset. We're very open to learning and growing together while learning and growing with the community. And then we were talking about communication. I apologize. I'm sorry. We were talking about building connections that are important to us within our organization and, kind of like dendrites, reaching out into the community, just trying to build that communication and build that connection.
Great. Thank you. I love the positivity. So thank you for sharing. Is there another organization, Artie from Urban League?
Good morning, everyone. So first of all, it was 5 minutes, but I enjoyed chatting with our team. We have more than 3. I'll share what we don't have really is a lot of individual donations. We are really good with corporate sponsors and foundations and grants. And so that's why we're here, because we want to get more support from individuals. But our 3 words to describe our current fundraising culture on that end would be non-existent, passive, a little unstructured. We are hopeful and collaborative in what we do currently. So we're overachievers because we were raised to be bigger and better. So I gave you more than 3. So thank you.
Well, I like overachievers. No, I love the mix of words. I one more organization, and anybody who would like to share in chat, please feel free. I don't think I mentioned that we will be saving the chat and posting it on the website so that people can go back and see what other organizations had to say. Jennifer, I think you're from Health Equity, correct? I see your hand raised.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So the three words that emerged for health equity solutions, first and foremost, I think that there is an element of excitement. I can share with everybody that, well, and let me talk about the second word because it leads into what I was about to share. That our second word is investment. And I am super excited because I have just joined the team here as its first director of fund development and have been here a total of about 6 weeks. So I definitely feel both, and I feel both of these words from our executive director and from the board members that we are excited, we are invested, and our culture of philanthropy is emerging. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing what we can achieve together.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I love the positivity in everybody's responses. I don't always hear that, so I think that sets us up in a good place to think about how we can move the needle on our culture of philanthropy. Thank you for the volunteers, and thank you for those of you who are sharing in chat. So I'm going to share my screen here for the slides and talk a little bit about culture philanthropy. And so some of you are probably wondering why I asked you to describe your culture of philanthropy. And the reason why is because there has been a tremendous amount of research in the nonprofit sector about culture of philanthropy. And a recent study by Adrian Sargent, who is considered an international expert on fundraising. He is also the professor who wrote the curriculum for the fundraising training course that some of you participated in with me, as well as taught many of the pieces of that course online. His research found several years ago, it was actually a study on fundraising planning. And one of the findings is that we can do as much planning as we'd like, but if we don't have a positive philanthropic culture, that planning is never successful. So his finding is that philanthropic culture is a key driver of fundraising performances, and that organizations who want to increase their outcomes, the amount of revenue they raise, really need to focus on developing a positive culture of philanthropy. So what I want to do is talk about what is that culture of philanthropy? What exactly is it? So the definition that I like to use is that it's a set of organizational values and practices that support and nurture fund development within a nonprofit's organization. It refers to your organization's attitude toward philanthropy and fund development. One of the things that I think that's interesting to point out is the use of the word philanthropy, because there really is a distinction, a connotation, different connotations for the word philanthropy versus fund development or fundraising. And I can tell you from my experience being out in the community and speaking with boards, the minute I talk about fundraising, everybody's eyes glaze over. But if I start to talk about philanthropy, it sort of changes the focus of the conversation. And really, because philanthropy is about doing good, about improving our communities. It's about a love of humankind. And the word focuses more on the actions that we want to take, the outcomes that we want to see, rather than the sole focus of just raising money. So I think that that's something to keep in mind as we move through this morning. A culture of philanthropy really has several key components. And in an organization that has a culture of philanthropy, what we tend to see is that everybody in the organization has a role to play in fundraising. And when we talk about everybody, we talk about board, staff, executive director, everyone in your organization, from the person who's answering your phones to the person who's chairing your board meetings, has some role to play. Might not be asking for money, but it's a role as an ambassador for your organization out in the community, bringing new people to your organization, spreading the word about your mission. In organizations that have a culture of philanthropy, donors are important. They're considered partners in the work we do. And we're very focused on building relationships with people who want to help move our mission forward. Third component is that fund development is valued and mission aligned part of everything the organization does, so that we don't have just one person, generally the development director if we have one, or the executive director if we don't, who's responsible for raising all the revenue so that we can do our work. Organizations that have a culture of philanthropy understand that without revenue, we can't achieve our mission. So here, when we look at organizations, I usually like to consider a culture of philanthropy as a spectrum. And the spectrum is that we have an organization that has maybe a fundraising culture or a culture of philanthropy, or most organizations lie somewhere in the middle. And so I just want to define what the two ends of the spectrum are. So in a culture of philanthropy, generally what we see is a complete focus on money. So in an organization that really has a fundraising culture, it's focused on campaigns, bringing in money for a year-end appeal, bringing in money for a spring appeal. Lots of times we only talk to our donors when we need money. The relationships with our donors are very transactional. We ask for money, they give. There's no communication in between. There's no relationship building or any kind of engagement. Fundraising culture, we usually see fundraising driven only by staff, a development director or the development department, or an executive director if you don't have a development department. In a culture of philanthropy, we see a focus on that word philanthropy that I'm talking about, on the love of mankind, on the joy of giving. Everyone in the organization shares some kind of responsibility for fundraising, maybe not asking for money, but definitely being ambassadors and building relationships with potential and current supporters. Donors are not viewed as just having money. They're viewed for skills, time, talent, what they can bring to your organization. We take the time to build relationships, to build partnerships with people, and we really value any gift. And that was something I can't remember which organization said it when they shared their culture of philanthropy, but they said they were grateful for all gifts, no matter whether they were big or small. And that's really what we see when an organization has a culture of philanthropy. So, breakout session number 2 for your teams. Where does your organization stand? Again, I do believe that this is a spectrum. So where are you on the culture of philanthropy spectrum? Are you closer to a fundraising culture? Are you closer to a culture of philanthropy? Are you somewhere in the middle? So what I've given you here are 5 points for you to rate your organization on and have a discussion about where your organization currently is on your journey to building a culture of philanthropy. We're going to have 12 minutes in breakouts to sort of assess your organization, have a discussion about where you stand, and if you could have a reporter who's ready to come back and share, that would be great. Okay, so we'll see you in 12 minutes. Slide. And what I'd like to do is just apologize. We had some technical difficulties. We do realize that you were not able to see the 5 points in your breakout sessions. So I want to apologize about that. I also want to tell you that on the website, I posted what I call a culture of philanthropy assessment. You'll see these 5 points on it, as well as an additional, I think, 6. It's a really great exercise to do with your board at a board meeting or with your board and staff at a retreat. So I'll encourage you to take a look at that. I am going to assume that you were all able to have some sort of conversation in breakout sessions for the last 12 minutes. And I'd love for an organization to share what they talked about. Do I have a volunteer? If 2 people have raised their hands. Peter from Center for Leadership and Justice. Oh, you're muted, so I just need you to unmute.
Sorry.
Yep, great, thanks.
The one thing we realized right away is that our organization Center for Leadership and Justice, which also has GIA as an integral part of the organization, the Greater Hartford Interfaith Equity Alliance, or Greater Hartford Interfaith. Anyway, I'll get it. Action Alliance, exactly. We are a relationally based organization, relation building through what we call house meetings and one-on-one conversations with our 50 congregations and their members is very much where we are, it's part of our organizational structure. And so moving that toward a philanthropy, a level of philanthropy beyond where we have been before is a natural progression from that relational culture. So we just all agree that it fits very well with who we are to begin with.
Great. So just you're already doing the work, but sort of expanding how you're doing it is what you're looking at.
Right. We really haven't done much philanthropy work within that relational culture, and that is something we can do. We have a new strategic plan that includes a sustainability component, which obviously makes development important as part of the work going forward.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Peter. Diane from Malta House.
Hi, good morning. So we actually feel like we're probably in the 2 to 3 range on these and moving towards that next number. We also just developed a strategic plan, and there's a large component of philanthropy that is focused on board and stewardship and getting the board around the fact that it's a team sport. And so I think that we've just embarked on a stewardship activity for all board members to engage in, just to say thank you to donors, to get them comfortable. I think that's part of the opportunity, is to help board members feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the organization and really just thanking donors and building relationships that are broader than just the exec or the development director. So, so we're moving towards that culture. And I think that everybody moving forward from the board perspective, as we do recruitment, will also be actively engaged. And that's part of the recruiting process, to be sure people are comfortable with that.
Great. Diane, thanks. Wonderful to hear. I love the work you're doing and the focus on stewardship. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Really important, and just developing board as ambassadors is really a way to help move your needle more towards the culture of philanthropy. So again, I just want to stress this is a spectrum. I have never seen a perfect organization. Our goal is really just to move the needle and to engage as many people as we can in our fund development work. I see Neha, you have your hand raised.
Hi, hi Sherry. Yes, I think we see ourselves in the 2 to 3 range as well. On the point of the donors are viewed and valued as more than just money, so we'll definitely put that on the higher side of things, because we do have a lot of donors that are donating time in different ways, and it's a very much volunteer-based organization in general, anyways, through the tutors that are part of the organization. But this is something. And that's what we want to. I think everybody has the good intentions. They want to contribute. They are contributing, but it's getting away from the hesitation and to be able to ask openly and invite others to contribute towards the mission.
Right. And again, one of the things, thank you, Neha, one of the things I like about the concept of a culture of philanthropy is that it really moves the focus away from just being about asking for money, which means that there are many things that people can do to help move an organization's fundraising forward, so that it's not just about soliciting, but it's about building relationships and stewarding donors. As we've heard, and building those relationships, being out in the community, talking about your cause. Do I have any other organization that would like to share, or anybody who'd like to share something? Please feel free to put it in chat. Again, I really encourage you to take a look at the assessment that I put on the website and take the time to have a discussion at a board meeting about where your organization stands on the culture of philanthropy spectrum, and how, as a board and as an organization, you can move the needle. That's what I want to talk about for a few minutes, is what we can do. So I talked a little bit about the connotations between the word philanthropy and fundraising and fund development and the difference. And one of the things that I really find helpful is reframing fundraising as philanthropy, as that voluntary action for the common good. You know, if we view it as we're helping people achieve their philanthropic goals, their desire to help others and to improve the world and make it a better place, and that they want to have impact, and they're having impact through their involvement with our organization, whether it's through their giving, through their volunteering, through their supporting of our organization in many different ways. And I find that that reframing really helps board members, volunteers, and staff get behind our fund development efforts. The second thing I suggest, and these are broad, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail after, is to focus on the joy of giving. And I have here a quote from Hank Rosso, who is the founder of the fundraising school at Indiana University, that fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. And really interestingly, this quote is from quite a while ago, but now neuroscience has shown us that Hank Rosso was really onto something. And what we have found through neuroscience is that the human brain is actually wired for generosity, and that there are MRI studies that show that the pleasure centers of our brain light up when we do something that brings us joy. So what we see is that the very same areas of the brain light up when we make a gift, when we give, as the areas that light up when we eat something like chocolate that brings us joy. And so it's really interesting. So science has shown that there actually is a connection to giving and how the brain reacts to giving. So really thinking about that, we are giving people the opportunity to be joyful through their giving, through helping others. And then my final broad thing is, if we never talk about our organization's philanthropic culture, we can never move the needle. And so often, most organizations don't talk about their fund development efforts. They don't talk about their approach. They don't talk about their values, the values that sort of ground their fund development work. So I encourage you to take the time to discuss it with your board, to discuss it with your full staffs, and to really be intentional about thinking about what grounds you in your philanthropic. So on a more specific note, what can we do to build our culture of philanthropy? And I have a few key points here. I've also posted on the website some specific actions that you can take. And what I'd rather do is tell you about an organization that I've worked with for a while, and about how we've been working to move the needle for their culture of philanthropy. So when I started with this organization, you know, fund development was really the responsibility of the executive director and a development assistant. There was no involvement from anyone else in the organization. It was never on the agenda at the board meeting. No one ever talked about it. You know, there just was not a culture of philanthropy. I would say that if I had to give you 3 words that described it, it was money-driven, transactional, and siloed. So siloed meaning we had 1 or 2 people who were responsible for it, and there was no involvement of anyone else. So when I started working with this organization, they hired me because they wanted to increase their individual giving, the result of their individual giving program. So where did we start? We started with this concept of culture of philanthropy. How can we build buy-in? How can we get everyone involved? You know, I started attending board meetings. We started talking about philanthropy and fund development and how people could get involved. The organization set up a development committee to help move the needle. This group, you know, I wanted to meet quarterly, they were all excited. We ended up meeting monthly. So it was really important to have people who were vested and wanted to see see a difference. And our main goal was really to engage people. So we started by focusing on board giving and getting the board involved and giving the board tasks that they felt comfortable with to, do some of that stewardship work that Diane was talking about. Call a donor, thank them, ask them why they were supporting the organization. I can say that 3 years later, this organization has moved their culture of philanthropy, which is what our next breakout's going to be about. And if I had to pick 3 words to describe it today, I would say it's inclusive. Everyone's involved. Everyone feels they have a responsibility and a role. It's collaborative. People are working together, board and staff in partnership to really achieve the organization's goals. And there's an element of celebration. And that's my last bullet here that I really want to point out is celebrating successes. So often we're focused on the raise the money that we never look at what we've achieved and we never celebrate those small wins. And those small wins might be in the form of a donor just telling you how important they think your organization is and sharing why they support your organization. And bringing that back to the full team is really part of that celebratory process.
Hey, Sherry, there is a question in the chat from Judy who asks, to get board buy-in, did you address discomfort and fear?
So I'm a firm believer in meeting board members where they're at. So I think everybody has a role to play, and that as an organization, it's our job, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, to match comfort level, passion, strengths, and talents with the tasks that we're asking board members to do. And I think that idea of addressing discomfort, that we can do that in a retreat format, but also I think it's sort of a process that people eventually become more comfortable as they get involved at their comfort level and then are willing to take on new tasks as they arise. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, so I'd like to do breakout 3, and this is, I want you to sort of look to the future. And most of you shared your current culture of philanthropy. If what we've talked about this morning, you've assessed your organizations, if you had to choose 3 words, what would those 3 words be about how you'd like your organization's future culture of philanthropy to look? And then I'd also like you to take a few minutes and talk about one action that your organization will take to enhance your culture of philanthropy. Say one action over the next few months that you think could help move the needle. So we're going to do 5 minutes in breakout. And if a couple of organizations can come back prepared to share, that would be great. I think we're all back. All right, welcome back, everybody. So do I have a volunteer organization that would like to share how they'd like their future culture of philanthropy to look and what one action they came up with in their discussions? Oh, this is my first time not having a volunteer right away. There we go. Shine your light, Melissa.
I'll help you out here. Okay.
Okay.
We talked about really developing our board to become ambassadors of our organization. So our executive director has developed a letter that's going to be going out to board members, and for us to have a goal of X amount of people we want to share our information. So yeah, becoming ambassadors, and then again, those dendrites, it'll just have a ripple effect.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really concrete goal. Neha, I see you have your hand raised.
I did. I wasn't sure if anybody else wants to talk, but so Diane summarized it perfectly. The way we want to take our culture is to be more engaged and more expansive. So engaged as in, of course, board members are more engaged, and expansive in terms of relationship building, and then expanding on those opportunities that will come full circle in terms of philanthropy as well as fundraising.
Great. I love the words. I love the engaged and expansive. I think those are great words to describe your future. So thank you for sharing that. Robin, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, and I'm on the board of the Farmington River Watershed Association. We were discussing our future culture of philanthropy as being more diverse, consistent, growing, and I'm going to cheat and add an extra thing, having deeper relationships. And one action that we will take to enhance the culture of philanthropy is we already have several fundraising events, but we want to have try to have one per season. Right now we've got one in the spring and one in the fall, and we're on the farm. We're all about the Farmington River. We need one that is a big one for summer and something for the winter as well. So that is a goal for us, I think, is to try to have one fundraising event a season and start there and see where we go.
Great, thank you. And I love your words also, diverse, consistent, growing, and the last one that you threw in, the deeper relationships, really key to developing a better culture of philanthropy, of strengthening your culture. Thank you for sharing, Robin. Sean, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm with the Harriet Beecher Stowe Museum and House. So the future culture of philanthropy would involve the full involvement of the organization. So from the frontline tour staff all the way up to the board. So full involvement. It would tap into the passion of those involved in the organization. So we've got a ton of that, and the ability to express that, I think, would generate great philanthropy and support. And then our culture would deliver joy. So as was discussed before, there are a lot of organizations and people who want to give, and if we're able to do it effectively, we could deliver joy to them by giving to our organization and letting them understand what their philanthropy is doing, what actions so to connect those two in an effective way might deliver joy. And then to enhance our culture of philanthropy, we need to have an organization-wide discussion on how we build that culture. So again, that's frontline people to the board, all the way to the board. How do we build the culture that we're talking about today? And that's the way you would need to sort of start this thing to get to where you want to go.
Great. Thanks so much. I loved the deliver joy, and it made me think about a quote from another consultant. She talks about how we're in the happiness business and that our goal is to help people find happiness through our organization. So I really love that was one of the points that you made. And I also am really excited to hear that your action step is to go back and have a discussion about your culture of philanthropy with the other members of your team who aren't necessarily here today. So thank you, Sean. Jane.
I just wanted to touch on the part where you were talking about how to engage board members, and somebody asked, what their role should be. And you really turned a negative into a positive, as you always do. And I love the way you do that. I really thought about making it their, what is their passion? What are their strengths? What are they good at? What do they like doing? And starting from a place there to move forward sounded great. And I could already, my mind was spinning thinking, oh, they could do this and they'd be great at this. And, we have so many more board members that are great at financial and this and that, but they also have these skills of being very thankful and kind. And we talked about writing a personal note to some of our donors that show that our board members are very thankful, instead of just an email to someone and just making a phone call or a note to someone, but really honing in on what their passion and what they're interested in helping with and letting that snowball into the next step. I thought that was really awesome advice. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jane. Thank you. And I do think it's really important to tie into people's passion. That's why, either we work for a nonprofit or we volunteer for a nonprofit. It's because we're passionate about the cause and the work that we're doing. So with that, I'd like to move on, but if anybody has anything else they'd like to share, please share that in chat. because we will be saving it. And I think it's important to learn from each other and what's working at different organizations. Jane, you gave me a good segue into my next part, which is about roles. But before we leave, I want just to talk about what the key takeaway from discussing a culture of philanthropy is. And this is a quote from Peter Drucker, a management guru, consultant, educator, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what we found is that an organization can have the best strategy, the best strategic plan in place, the best fundraising plan in place. But if you don't have a positive culture that supports those planning efforts, then you won't see the kinds of results that you'd like to see. So I'm really encouraging all of you to think about what your culture of philanthropy is, to really think about where it's at and where you want it to be, and to begin working as a team, as a whole organization, to really move that needle towards the concept of a culture of philanthropy. So with that, do I have any questions on the topic of culture of philanthropy before we move on? Okay, great. Again, there's some resources on the website. I did reference a study in one of the slides for anybody who wants to read in-depth research on culture of philanthropy. It was funded by the Hartford Foundation probably about 10 years ago, still very relevant. And with that, I'm going to move on to our next topic for the morning, which is about your fund development team. So really, what I want your takeaway to be here, and it is tied to a culture of philanthropy, is that everyone has a role to play, regardless of what part of the team you are. There's something that everyone can do to help implement or achieve your fund development goals. So what I'd like to do is start by talking about your board of directors. And for some of you, these organizations that are here with us today have participated in the board leadership program. So you've probably seen something similar to this slide. This is the 10 basic responsibilities of a board. And what I have in red, of course, is the ensure adequate financial resources. How we do it differs, but it is a main responsibility of a board to make sure that there are adequate financial resources so that your organization can do its work. Now, boards, when we talk about boards, we talk about boards as a full board, as a governing body of an organization, as well as individual board members. And the responsibilities for the board in fund development as a governing body differ than our responsibilities as individual board members. So as a governing body, meaning the entire board who gets together, the 10 to 20, maybe more of you who get together regularly to meet and provide leadership and direction for your organization. What does that mean in terms of fund development? It means that you as a governing body are responsible, in collaboration or partnership with your executive director, CEO, to set overall direction for the fund development program. You know, what are you trying to achieve? What are the goals of your program? B, what I really like to point out is setting and achieving realistic fund development goals. I so often walk into an organization, take a look at the budget, and see a number under individual giving, under donations. And when I ask where it came from, they'll tell me that there was a hole in the budget, so we put it there. That's not really a realistic goal. We want realistic goals for what you think you can raise, whether it's based on past performance and a projection of future performance, but it can't be a place to put the deficit. Next, it takes money to raise money. So a board's responsibility is to ensure that there are resources so that you can achieve those realistic goals. Successful fund development requires people to do the work, whether they're paid or volunteer, and it requires some kind of budget that goes along with it because it does take money to raise money. So I just want to point that out. As a governing body, you're responsible for creating and approving policies that guide your fundraising work. So an example of that might be a gift acceptance policy. Do you only accept gifts of cash? If somebody wanted to donate a piece of property to you, would your organization accept it? If you did accept it, what would you do with it? All things that should be put into policies. Another example would be a donor privacy policy. How are you safeguarding donor information, keeping things confidential? Just a couple of examples. Last role as a governing body is ensuring that your fundraising methods are legal, and ethical. So what does that mean? Legal means, an example would be that there are IRS rules around how we acknowledge gifts from donors. Is your organization abiding by those rules? Ethical standards. I get questions every once in a while about, can we pay our development director on commission? The Association of Fundraising Professionals doesn't view that as ethical. We shouldn't be paying our development staff based on how much they raise. So is that something that your organization is considering or is doing? Is that something you really want to be doing? So that's just an example. So that's board as a governing body. Then we have a board that's made up of individuals, and our individual board members have specific responsibilities. So what are those? First and foremost, part of the culture of philanthropy, being willing to serve as an ambassador, make connections on behalf of the organization, be out there talking about why you're involved with your nonprofit, the work of your nonprofit, the impact that you're having in the community. Really important. Most nonprofits are under-resourced. You're an extension of the nonprofit. You help get the word out there and supplement the efforts of the staff. So I really can't tell you how important it is to have a bunch of ambassadors out in the community really making connections on behalf of the organization. Our second role as a board member, individual board members, is to be engaged in that relationship building that we've been talking about. Really out there connecting with people, deepening relationships, deepening their involvement with your organization, and building that trust and confidence that's so important to building healthy relationships and long-term relationships with a nonprofit. And the final role in fund development is to make an annual personal financial commitment. And I will start out by saying that there is disagreement in the sector as to whether board members should be required to give a gift. This is my opinion. I think it's really important, if I serve on a board or I'm working with a board, that board members make a financial commitment. We're asking others to make a financial commitment. As board members, we're the closest to our organization. We know our organization. We know whether it's a worthwhile investment. Our giving tells other people that this is an organization that's deserving of philanthropic support. It encourages other people to give, and it also creates ownership on the part of board members and the board as a governing body in the organization. I will say that I am not a fan of give and get policies, but I am a fan of 100% board giving goals. I think everybody should make a personal commitment that they're comfortable making, a personal financial commitment. So that's just board. One thing before I move on is I've put on the website a template, a board job description template, and there's some language in there about board members and their fundraising responsibilities. So anybody who'd like to look at that, you're welcome to take that language, modify it, and put it into your board member job description if you'd like. And I've also included an example of a board member individual engagement plan. That is a tool that I like to use when I'm working with boards, where board members commit at the beginning of the year as to how they'll help in terms of their fund development efforts at the organization. So you're welcome to take a look at that and modify that also. So board chair, I know there are a lot of you here today based on that first survey we did, and board chairs really have a special role in fund development. I just want to take a minute to talk about that. As the leader of the board, you really set the tone for philanthropy at your organization, and it's really an important position, really important for moving the needle on a culture of philanthropy and helping achieve your fund development goals. First thing that a board member can do is make sure that board chair can do is make sure that fund development is a priority. So often I go to organizations and fund development is never talked about. It's not an item on the board meeting agenda. As a board chair, you're working in partnership with your executive director or CEO to set that meeting agenda and really making the time and space to talk about philanthropy and fund development. And not just a reporting out about where we're at, but talking about things that can help move us forward, how board members can get involved, successes that we've had. really what our goals are and where we're at and why it's important. Again, fund development, we talked about culture of philanthropy and fund development being integrated and mission aligned. Board meetings are a place for this. Board planning sessions are a place for this. We can't plan without talking about how we're going to fund our goals. So it's really integrated into everything we do. Make sure fundraising expectations are clearly articulated. As the board leader, we want board members to understand that this is part of their responsibility. Again, if you have a development committee, making sure that we recruit an enthusiastic committee chair and a strong committee to support fund development. Board chair sets an example by making a personal meaningful gift, by championing board giving, 100% participation, and again, celebrating fund development successes. Again, the easy way at a board meeting is to do a shout out to a board member who's maybe done something that's moved the needle on your fund development efforts. Maybe it's secured a gift or opened a door so that the organization could talk to somebody in the community that resulted in a gift. So celebrate those successes, use it as an example to motivate other board members to get involved. I want to take a minute to talk about development committees. Not all organizations have fund development committees. I think that they're a really great tool to elevate fund development as a board priority. If your board is big enough, I strongly encourage you to set one up. What it really does is it provides a formal structure for the board's fund development work. A development committee can help set the tone, articulate the need for board involvement, help with follow-up and accountability. It's also a great way to cultivate future board leaders by having them involved on that committee. And some of the organizations I work with have non-board members on their fund development committees. And it's a great way for a volunteer to sort of get their toes wet, see if they like it. I do have one organization where the development committee has become a pipeline for their board. So people have served on the development committee, gotten more involved. I have one development committee member who came on as a volunteer, really liked what was going on, stepped up, chaired an event, really elevated the success of that event, and is now serving on a board member. So it's a really good way for someone to get involved without feeling at the beginning like they have the responsibility of a full board member. So something to think about. Any questions on board role, board chair role, fund development committees? Also on the website, I've put a template of a fund development committee job description as well as a fund development committee job chair description. You can feel free to take a look at those and borrow them, edit them, make them relevant for your organization.
Sure, I have a quick question. Isn't, if I may, is that okay?
Yes.
If and just reflecting on having a fund development committee and keeping the culture of the whole board being engaged, don't you run the risk of having, oh, this is the committee's role, and sort of have folks disengage?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is one of the things, when we go back to that idea of culture philanthropy, if we want everyone involved, that means that we can't view it as it's only the development director's role and it's the development committee's role to raise the money. So I really look at a development committee more as a facilitator, that they're there to sort of plan, give feedback to staff, but also they're the people who go out and ask for that board involvement and then who follow up with the board, because I think peer-to-peer accountability is really successful, more successful than staff to board accountability. So I really view that fund development committee as the people who are saying, hey, have you thanked your 10 donors this month? That kind of thing. And it's more likely that it'll get done if it's coming from up here. But I do think that takes some coordination. So
yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So next, executive director, CEO, what's the role? bottom line is if you're an executive director or the CEO of your organization, you are the chief fundraiser, even if you have a development director. Donors, funders, they want to see you. You're the face of the organization. They want to talk to you. They want you to be part of their relationship with your organization. So it's really important that as an executive director, CEO, you're out there building relationships, having contact, whether it's cultivating or stewarding donors. You're responsible in conjunction with the board to lead and plan. You work as a team to set the tone for fund development at your organization, for cultivating that organizational culture and setting those realistic fund development goals. You're there to model the behavior. We can't expect our volunteers to do something that we're not willing to do. And you're also there to evaluate. Fund development, a lot of it is testing and trial and error. So there has to be some kind of benchmarking, to determine whether we're successful at what we're doing, and also sometimes changing our strategies midstream. So really that falls under the purview of our executive director. If you are lucky enough to have a development director, I'm not sure everyone here does, most of you do, but what is your development director's role? Hands down, first thing I can say is it's not to be the only person raising money for your organization. There was a study done about 10 years ago. It's really relevant even today. It was about why there's so much turnover, that revolving door for fund development directors. And I'm still seeing it as I'm seeing all these postings for development staff in our community. And what they found 10 years ago is that fund development is about more than just one person, and that our organization's culture, in order to support fundraising success, needs to embrace that. A development director can't be the only one responsible for bringing in revenue for an organization. It's an unrealistic expectation that's leading to turnover in many of our organizations. So really the role of our development director is to be an engager, to engage others in their fund development work, to be a project manager. They're coordinating all our activities and logistics, keeping everybody on task, maintaining our records, providing data so that we can evaluate our results. They're there as a resource, as a trainer, providing our volunteers, our staff, our board with the tools they need to be successful. And they're there as a role model. Again, like the executive director, if your development director isn't willing to do the work and be out there and connecting with people and building relationships, we can't expect our volunteers to be doing the same thing. Okay, and finally, the last piece of our team is our staff. And I think a lot of times we overlook the value or the role that our staff at our non-development staff can play in fund development. And I sort of see three areas where staff is really key. First is they're the closest to the work that we do. They're out there actually, running our programs, working with the people we serve. They have the best stories of impact. They can tell the stories about the lives that are being changed or the changes that we're making in our community. And that's what donors want to know. They want to know how their involvement with your organization is making a difference. I have one development director that I work with. She never goes out into the community without bringing a direct service staff member along to share a story about the work that that organization is doing. It is highly effective, and I encourage others to do it. Staff are great relationship builders. Again, they're passionate about the work that they're doing and they're seeing the changes firsthand. They are great at tours, at thank you calls. I have one executive director who does Thankful Thursdays, buys pizza for her small staff, and they write thank you notes to donors at lunchtime. Highly effective, something to think about, different ways to involve your staff. And finally, staff are really involved in customer service and our donor service. They are there, they're having contact when someone calls your organization, they're responsive to that person, connecting them with the resources that they need. They're attentive, they need to have a positive outlook and really be thinking about connecting with the people, whether they're calling your organization, whether it's someone who's attending an event that they're working, whether they're on a tour. It's really about treating others the way we'd want to be treated if we were making a gift to our organization. So really, I think staff, non-development staff, is also often overlooked in terms of the role that they can play in fund development and relationship building and your philanthropic efforts. So any questions on role of any part of the team? Okay, so I'm going to do a poll, and this poll is just for board members, this question, then we'll have one for staff. When you were recruited to serve on your organization's board, were board fundraising expectations shared with you? Yes, no, or you don't recall? Okay, I think most of our board members have responded. This is great. I am so happy to see that more than half of you say yes, because so often I find that people are recruited. I know I've been recruited to boards, and when I ask what my responsibilities are, they tell me just to attend a meeting every month. So I am so happy that most of you are sharing that you do have fundraising expectations prior to somebody agreeing to come on the board. For those organizations that are not, I strongly encourage you to share your expectations in advance. It is the foundation of board members getting involved. If when they say yes to you, they know they have responsibilities, they are more likely to get involved. All right, great. My next question is for staff. You know, when you were, are your fundraising expectations clearly defined in your job description or as part of an annual goal setting process? Yes, no, I don't recall. Okay. I think most of you have weighed in. This is great. Again, you know, so often I see announcements for executive director positions that don't say anything about the revenue piece of the job. So I'm happy to see that many of you already know what those expectations are. It really is the foundation of building a successful fund development team. So here I have some characteristics of a successful fundraising team, and you'll see the first is that clear understanding of roles and expectations. I think if we don't talk about it and tell people, you know, what we need, that it's very hard to have a successful team. And when I define team, it's more than just those of you who are here today. It means that everybody in your organization needs to understand those roles and expectations. Full board, everybody on staff. How do we learn about those expectations for board? We learn about our expectations through the recruitment process, through a board member job description, through board orientation. If you have one, it's a great opportunity to talk about expectations and to provide some basic fund development training. Possibly using a board engagement plan. I told you I put an example of that on the website for you to take a look at. And also regular training. So today's a start, but we have more people than just the people who are on this call to train. So really bringing some of this information back to your organizations would be a great step. Again, everybody is valued and recognized for their contributions. Many ways for people to get involved. Not everybody has to be out there soliciting and asking for money. I love my fourth one. No one talked into being on the team. It's always distressing when I meet with an organization and I meet with their development committee and everybody's arm's been twisted. No one wants to be there. We really want people who see the importance of fund development, understand that without revenue, we can't do our work, and are really there because they believe in the mission and want to make sure that there are adequate resources so that an organization can achieve their goals and change lives. Again, open, honest communication, accountability, that there's some kind of follow-up and check-in with people, really key for successful fundraising teams to function. So with that, I'd like to go into our fourth breakout. And what I'd like you to think about, and I talked about this a little earlier about matching strengths and talents. It's really important to to really build on the strengths and talents of our team so that our team can be the best that it can be. So what I'd like you to think about is, what strengths and talents do you and your team bring to, do you and your teammates bring to your fundraising team? How can we leverage those collective strengths to enhance our board staff fundraising partnership? And what is it that we need to be successful? You know, as a board member, what kind of support do you need from the staff? And as a staff member, what kind of support do you need from the board? Okay, we are going to go into our breakout rooms for, let's say, 12 minutes, and then come back prepared to share what you learned about your teams. Okay, I think we're all back. So do I have an organization that would like to volunteer to share a little bit about what they learned about their teams in this breakout session? An action step? Diane, thank you for
Sure.
volunteering.
Sure, we will. So we think we really think that the passion of our board and our staff for our mission and our dedication to sustainability and growth is really critical. And that's a real strength that I think the whole group brings to the organization. In terms of leveraging our strengths, really using board members as role models. I think it's great that we have board members on this today. We are going to send out a sample thank you letter that one of our board members wrote by hand to the rest of the board members so that they can see it and really feel. I think maybe somebody said, celebrate the joy of giving. He certainly did that with a note that he wrote to a donor. And then really what we need from each other is commitment. Say what you will do and do it. And also communicate our expectations of each other, and then celebrate a lot about the success of really, having a culture of philanthropy that will serve the mission that we're also dedicated to.
Yeah, great, thanks. Thank you for sharing that. I love the thank you note, and I think examples of thank you notes written by other board members really motivate people to do the same, to share their passion. And also that celebration, I really can't stress how important that is. It really motivates people when we talk about the wins that we've had. Other board members, other volunteers get motivated to be part of that. So thank you for sharing that, Diane. Calvin, I see you have your hand raised.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Calvin Price, and I serve as the chair of the Partnership for Strong Communities. And it really is a joy to join you this morning for this conversation, which I think is very informational and very supportive of the work that all of our organizations do. As I sit and listen this morning, the thing that really resonates with me is relationships. We talk about relationships in the lens of building relationships. And I think relationships from our organization is long-term. How do we give and how do we receive? And you find out if you have and you firmly believe in relationship, it's not when you need something, it's every day. It's the day, and it's the mindset of your organization. It's the mindset of your life, because you will always need, but it's always an opportunity to give. And when we look at the talent that we have at the partnership, we all come from different walks of life, but we have a common goal into what we believe in and why we serve at the partnership. And that really is housing, and how do we improve the quality of housing in the state of Connecticut. And I think when we look at the talent that we have on our board, we cover all of the arenas in the housing waterfront. In addition to that, we have lobbyists, we have politicians, we have financial individuals, we have educators. And I think the diversity of your board is extremely important, because it allows for you to cover a lot of different areas. And when you come to the table, you get a lot of different views. We have all talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That goes a long way, not short term. It's a way that if you're going to be successful, you have to have inclusivity. You have to be in a position to listen to all of the information. And I think that's the important part. And those are two of the points that we talked about. But I will not miss the opportunity to tell you that just a little thank you note written by board members and your own handwritten notes goes a long way. you can realize how many projects you work on, and all you wanted to receive was a thank you note in your mail one morning. And that still is the king of the road. Thank you. You can't say it enough because it goes a long way, and a person will remember that thank you. And I think that's what we are discussing at the partnership. How can we thank all of our funders for their contributions to us? And how can we make sure that we reciprocate by executing why they gave us the funding? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Calvin, thank you. So many good points in there. I love the passion and just the point about thank yous. Handwritten notes are really appreciated in this day of technology and impersonal emails and texts, and they're highly effective. And those thank yous aren't just for our donors, but for our volunteers. You know, take the time to thank the people who are doing the hard work on behalf of our organizations. Thanks so much, Calvin, for sharing. Lisa, I see you have your hand raised.
I do. I'll only take a minute because I know we're getting at time. So I am one of the board members here on the call today for YW. And what we were talking about in our breakout session was our talent and skills and, you know, what makes us a great organization in collaboration between the staff and the board is really the stories of what brought us to work on the why, right? Why we feel like this is our mission, this is what we're dedicated to, this is our passion, how we want to really sort of spread that message. We did talk this also about how relationships are not sort of a one and done, right? It's not just a, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this great person I know, and then sort of that's it, but that the cultivation and the continued cultivation of relationships is really what can strengthen the engagement, not only between the board and the staff and talking about it, but also just in general, how you get your message and your engagement with the rest of the community is just continuing to be able to express that passion that you have and bring that to the relationships, and then again and again and again and reaching out. So that's what we were talking about during our breakout session. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Lisa. That was such a nice segue into the topics that we're going to be discussing at session 2, which is about the fundraising cycle, about cultivating, building relationships with donors, as well as the story of why you as volunteers and staff members are involved with your organization. That's part of making our case for support. So thank you for that. I'm going to just move on because we are getting close to the end of our session. So if anybody would like to share anything in chat, please feel free to do so. I did want to just take a minute. This is what I call the elephant in the room about why our board and staff won't fundraise. Just share a couple of the excuses I normally hear. You know, a lot of times I hear that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's really important that we support our volunteers, our human resources, and being engaged in fund development. You know, you are all here this morning, great step, but taking trainings, what we learned back to our full organization is really important. Another thing that I hear a lot is that people might ask me questions that I can't answer. I cannot stress how important it is that our board members and volunteers and even staff members can't be good ambassadors without tools and support. I did post on the website. It's a publication by Board Source. It's called, I think it's called the Board Communication Toolkit. It talks about what kind of information a board member needs to have at their fingertips to be a good ambassador. So check that out. Talking points for all your ambassadors are really, really important. I also hear program staff say, why do you want me to talk to donors? Isn't that the development department's job? We talked about the role that they can play. Go back, share that with your organizations. And again, we talked about making sure that people know what their expectations are in advance. My last slide for the morning is just a few tips we've really covered for building that partnership, the fundraising partnership, board staff fundraising partnership. We've really covered everything here. Again, it's about matching those strengths and talents that you talked about in your breakout rooms with specific fund development tasks. We will get into more detail about that in our next session. So just to give you a minute, I'd like one last breakout session. I'm going to only give you 3 minutes in your breakout room. One action that your organization will take to strengthen the fund development partnership. So 3 minutes, one thing that you think you can do over the next month to make your team stronger. That, and I'm just waiting for everyone to come back. We are almost all back. All right, great. Okay, I want to just thank everybody. I hope we have run out of time, so I hope everybody came up with a goal. If organizations are willing to put that in the chat, I'd love to see what the goal is, what you're going to work on over the next month to strengthen your fundraising teams. You know, I'm big into action steps, so I hope you took the time to develop action steps, and I'd love to read them after the session, but I don't want to keep you over time. So I'm going to just give you a sneak peek about what we're talking about at session 2. It is on Tuesday, November 14th, 8:30 to 10:30. I'm going to give a quick glimpse of what philanthropy looks like in the US, and we are going to dive into what I consider fundamentals, what every fundraising team needs to know about fund development, some fundraising principles, some information about who donates and why, and we'll go into detail about the fund development cycle and how different members of your team can be involved in that cycle. And finally, I'm going to talk about articulating your case for support. It is really a building block for successful fund development and a building block for helping your team be the best ambassadors that they can be. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating this morning. I will stay on for a little bit to field any questions that anyone has. Also, feel free to email me with any questions that you might have. And I want to thank you all for being here this morning, and I'm going to turn this over to Mayor.
Thanks, everyone. Nothing much from me. Just a big thank you for all of you making the time this morning. Thank you to Sherry for leading us through this this thought-provoking material, for Monica and her Zoom skills getting us through. Please fill out the survey. Let us know what you thought of the session. Any suggestions for improving the next couple of sessions, we welcome, and we look forward to seeing you on November 14th. And anyone who wants to stay on, please do.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, Sherry. I just have a quick question for you. At the
Sure.
beginning of the workshop, you had mentioned there was like a worksheet that we could do with our board members. So I went
Yes.
to the link that Mayor provided, and I'm not seeing it. So
It says, I think it's the top thing, cultural philanthropy assessment. Do you see that?
hold on, let me go back.
It's under session 1.
So Mayor, when I click that link, the first date on there is 1/18/2023. So would it be under that one?
I think it's the wrong link, Mayor.
I just opened it. I think it's working. I'm in the page and I'm in the culture of philanthropy assessment.
Yeah.
Right. So when
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I might have put the wrong page link in the chat.
I have it. I can put it in.
Okay, thanks, Monica.
Yeah.
Hi, Sherry. Great job today. Thank you so much. This is Angelo DeFazio with the Malta House of Care. I'm on the board and the chair of the finance committee. Very enlightening. I think we need things like this to keep our spirits up and to engage and go out and conquer the philanthropic world. I sit on a few boards, nonprofits, and one of them that I sit on just instituted scorecards for board members. Have you, how do you feel about scorecards Because there's a lot of controversy. And do you think they work, or I'm just curious on what your thoughts are on scorecarding the
So,
board.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan. You guys are volunteers. You're volunteering your time. I think that I'm more a fan of those engagement plans that I talked about, where it's more of a conversation between board chair and an executive with individual board members about how they want to contribute as board members, than something that we're grading people or rating people on. You know, again, I think it takes the joy out of volunteering and the joy out of giving. Personal opinion.
I appreciate that because I voted your way. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hi, I see Artie. Do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
No, I don't. I was just filling out the survey and thought I would listen to what other people were asking about, because perhaps I could learn from something that they said. So I was just hanging out. Thank you so much for the information. It was really, really good. Really
great. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for volunteering to share some of the discussions of your organization. So
yeah,
it's always
for
great when I
sure.
have volunteers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care. You too. Have a good day.
Too. Bye-bye.
And I think that's it.